started. Good afternoon, and welcome to the panel of Ride the Wave with Cookieless Change. I'm Neha, I'm client partner at RTB House, and I'll be your host for this session. My background has always been in advertising. I've worked across creative agency, publishers, and now ad tech. And in my many, many years, I have seen the advertising landscape change almost at the pace with UK weather. So now, a big positive change is coming. And of course, you want some pro tips on how to surf that wave. So for that purpose, we have put together our panel of experts, our clients, CV Library, Assembly Global, along with Google and RTB House themselves. I'm just going to pass over to my panelists to introduce themselves. So starting with you, Luke.
Hi, my name's Luke. I'm head of performance marketing at CV Library Group, which is the largest independent job board in the UK. I head up our performance marketing channels, so covering PPC, paid social, display, retargeting, and affiliate partnerships as well. And really looking forward to a great panel discussion.
Thanks for coming on board. Over to you, Willie.
Hi guys, my name is Billy. I'm from Assembly Global. I'm a European media director and looking after all things digital. So at Assembly we have a load of luxury brands, so looking after kind of all things from brand and performance and making sure that they have a digital maturity that kind of helps them surf these new waves. So great to be here.
Excited to have you over, and over to you.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Scott. I work on the Privacy Sandbox partnerships team at Google. So my job is working with companies who are integrating with our technologies and testing them out, and also with the wider ecosystem to make sure that they're aware of all the changes that are coming in the future to Chrome and Android.
Thanks for coming on board, and Howie.
Yeah, hi, I'm Howie, VP of Operations for RTB House's UK business. So my role is to look after all of our client-facing teams, so account management, technical account management, business analytics, and supply side.
Fantastic. So I think let's first uncover why is Cookieless on center stage? And my question to you, Scott, can you tell us what roles are cookies playing in today's world? Why this change, and what's going to change?
Yeah, so I mean, the cookies as a technology has been around for a long time, like 20 plus years, and it does a lot of really useful things on the web and powers a lot of great experiences, which is obviously great as well. But unfortunately, the cookie is also used for a lot of things that aren't so great, like cross-site tracking, identifying users, and other use cases. And we think that given kind of the evolving user expectation around privacy, as well as regulations around the globe that have obviously changed a lot in the past few years, we're kind of at this inflection point where the third-party cookie no longer makes sense. And that's kind of how we arrived at the Privacy Sandbox project, which is an initiative that's been around for a few years, and this is a collaborative cross-industry initiative where we want to come up with new solutions, new technologies to power sort of ad-supported business models on the web that provide sort of free content and services that we all know and love and use, but do it in a way that is private for users and doesn't allow sort of cross-site or cross-app tracking in ways that are possible today with third-party cookies. And we're actually approaching a really exciting milestone because these new technologies have kind of been available to test and on a very small scale up until now. But starting in about 2 weeks' time, we're going to be rolling out these technologies to 100% of Chrome users globally, which means that many more companies will be able to experiment, test, and build solutions using the Privacy Sandbox, which will give us about a 12-month time period to optimize and to understand how this will work before we do ultimately remove third-party cookies from Chrome in the middle of 2024. So exciting times.
Thanks for validating that timeline. And
also,
really interesting for user privacy. However, Howie, like my question to you is, there's a lot of rumors that retargeting solutions will not work post-cookieless. So what's your view on that?
So I think there's three main things that power retargeting as it works today. So firstly, you need to profile users on a website. You need to understand them. And you need to be able to get enough data to understand, is this a user that's likely to convert? Secondly, you need to be able to buy that user in an auction at the correct price. So someone who's really likely and potentially has a really big basket, you might want to pay more for. Someone who's slightly less likely with a smaller basket, you want to pay less for. And then finally, you want to be able to serve personalized ads. So these are the three key elements of retargeting as it works today, powered by cookies. And thanks to the work that Google have done in terms of setting up the privacy sandbox, but also RTB House, we've contributed some really key parts of the solution in terms of a couple of key bits of code. You're able to do all of those things once the third-party cookie gets removed. So first-party cookies stay, so you can still collect all of that valuable user data. And then there's a couple of bits of technology. I'm not going to go into the weeds in those, but if anyone is interested, I'm sure Scott or myself, we can talk you through it in a bit more detail. But you will be able to buy users at a precise level in the bid, and you will also be able to show them personalized ads in the same way that you can today. So it's totally possible to do retargeting as effectively once the third-party cookie gets removed.
That's quite reassuring. And then I'll move to you, Luke. CV Library does rely on performance marketing, especially retargeting. So what are you doing to transition?
Yeah, so it's actually been quite an interesting timeline because prior to CV Library about a year ago, I pretty much spent most of my career agency side. So, approaching the end of that sort of time agency side, it was very much kind of the topic of conversation. And then, at some point then that kind of timeline got delayed. So I feel like kind of that urgency in some cases might have given way to a bit of complacency in terms of how brands might be thinking about cookieless. But, speaking at the other end of the spectrum now, as head of performance marketing at CV Library, I think for me, fundamentally, it's really just kind of making sure we're preserving the performance aspect of how we're investing in those channels as well. So, something that's really important to me is not just necessarily how one channel is doing in particular, but how we're diversifying our channels to deliver on performance in a holistic way across both candidate acquisition and retargeting as well. So, yeah, I think from my perspective, it's very much the case of performance needs to be maintained fundamentally.
Sounds very hands-on, Luke. So Billy, my question to you would be, now you're dealing with many clients. What's happening on agency side of things? How are you helping them?
Yeah, it's a good question. So at agency side, I think it's kind of on us to make sure that we're just putting together a real robust kind of like testing, learning framework so that we're basically helping our clients navigate through all of this. And it's great to hear, obviously, RTB and Google working on solutions. There's a lot of solutions that have come out already. There's going to be a lot more that come into space. So we're kind of playing both sides at the moment, using both strategies, cookies and non-cookies. But yeah, what would be great is to then actually look at creating test and learning frameworks and then making sure that we're able to still hit the same performance levels that we were hitting before, right? And it's going to take a bit of teething to find that, but that's where I start for agencies and their clients that are looking to kind of navigate this new era.
So are your clients going to go on summer holidays peaceful, thinking you guys have got it?
No, absolutely not.
All right, so actually, like one point of clarification, Scott. Now, the solutions or the methods that Howe was mentioning, is that going to be exclusive to RTB House, you think?
Yeah, so as I sort of mentioned from the beginning, this has been a collaborative project, and all of the technologies that I've mentioned are going to be available to anybody that wants to use them. So they're actually agnostic to the user, and they're not themselves end-to-end advertising solutions. They're actually just tools or signals that other companies like RTB House and others will build on top of that are sort of private by default, but allow for the really important use cases around ad-supported businesses.
Right. So we've come up with some universal solutions. That's good. Now let's talk about branding. Branding has less reliance on third-party cookies. So what's even happening in this space now? Scott, let's get back to you, and if you could clarify.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, these aren't really end-to-end solutions. There isn't a branding solution for the privacy sandbox, but what there is new signals that companies can use to build on top of them. And one example is called the Topics API, which gives you a interest-based signal about your user that you can use to kind of target them as a brand based on their interests. That will work in many ways the same as how interest-based advertising works today, but it's doing it with this new private signal that doesn't release any uniquely identifying user information.
Wow. So there's going to be an independent approach. Billy, you said you've been testing a few things, so do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think it depends on the client and the category that they operate in, but essentially what we want to make sure is just that client and whatever advertising needs that they need, they can still hit that same audience, right? And like you say, branding, there's a lot of other signals like contextual and things, so we may not be as reliant on third party, but we still want to make sure that if that was the signal where our audiences were previously, how are we now going to use other tactics to make sure that we're hitting them whilst Google and partners come along with new solutions? I think one thing I'd add on top of that as well is that for media agencies, it's a really good time to actually have a conversation about how they use data as well. And so what first-party data is available, how are they kind of segmenting their audiences, what tech stack are they using? And can we actually do anything there so that we can do some like custom model data modeling off of their first-party data, build some publisher cohorts, and actually just make sure that branding relationship is just more direct and there's more of that one-to-one relationship.
Wow, that's a lot of prep.
Yeah.
Howe, actually, RTB House is a full funnel solution and not just retargeting, but equally focuses on branding. What are they saying about the branding solutions that's there?
So we don't use a huge amount of third-party cookie today on our branding solutions. And as Scott mentions, there's this new signal, which is Topics API. So this is a brand new signal that we can use to help inform our branding product. So actually, we look forward to that solution coming online. I guess we'll be able to start doing some testing in a couple of weeks' time on that topic signal. RTB House made an announcement about a company called Prime Audience that we're launching, which is kind of sitting in the middle there. That's not detail we're going to cover today, but it's looking at using that sort of topic signal to help create audiences for our customers as well. So actually, we're quite enthusiastic about the changes that are going to come because we think there's going to be more signal that we're going to be able to use.
So there you go, additional signal. I'm just going to move on to the next bit, which is whose responsibility is it going to be to prepare for cookieless? Is it going to be everyone or vendors only? So let's start with you, Luke.
Well, I think it's quite an overarching topic, to be honest. So, there's certainly different sort of stakeholders within this whole ecosystem that have probably different responsibilities to basically respond to the situation. So, from our perspective, and Billy touched on it earlier on as well, it's prompted the whole topic in terms of not just looking at our traditional performance channels and what performance we can continue to derive from those in the future, but then also how we're leveraging our own data, how we're gathering it, how we're getting consent for it, and operating in a very consumer or candidate-centric way. So, like I said, in terms of our channel or marketing diversification, it's all about not just how can we utilize or how can we make sure that retargeting still does what it needs to, but how can we get the right level of consent from our own users to be able to then re-engage with them later and not necessarily have to be reliant solely on paid media to communicate with our candidates as well. So I'd say that's certainly our responsibility to make sure we operate in a best practice way around that, and certainly understanding what value our brand gives to those candidates that are coming to us over, say, a competitor, and making sure they keep coming back as well. So I think yes, there's maybe shorter-term responsibilities that some people have in terms of making sure we're seeing that same CPA or cost per registration or cost per application that we have, but then also longer-term how we are acting in a responsible way to continue to communicate and engage with either existing candidates or prospective candidates.
Fantastic. So, Billy, anything you would like to add to what Luke just said?
Yeah, I think Luke summarised that really nicely. I guess the only thing that I would add from an agency perspective is that so that we can help clients like Luke as well, we just need to understand all of the available options that are happening. And so already there's so many products, right? And like Scott mentions, there's new APIs being released. There's going to be new functionality that can be built on top of it. How he alluded to a new product that's coming already. And so I think for agencies, we just have to mirror up all of those solutions that come available. And then it's going to be our job to pivot which solution is going to be the best for our clients based on their objectives and the category that they sit within.
Interesting. Great. So, Howe, I guess the vendors are also taking more of an ownership in this preparation. So what's happening right now at RTB?
So we're getting ready with all of our clients to do testing. So as Scott mentioned, in a couple of weeks' time, you promise, right? We're going to have access to all of the Chrome audience to start testing the Protected Audiences API, so that we'll be able to start. There's a tagging that needs to take place. So a bunch of our more recently acquired clients have the latest set of tags, but some of our older clients, we need to update the tags. But once that's all in place, we're going to actively test with our clients. So on a retargeting campaign, part of that budget will be being pushed through the Protected Audiences API. And so we're going to be making sure that our clients are ready for the switchover, because we're going to start testing in the second half of this year, so that all of those campaigns can start to get optimized in this new environment. So that's where we're at in terms of preparation. And then, of course, on the branding side, again, once we've got access to the full audience and the topics API, we'll be able to start playing around a little bit with that signal and seeing how that impacts the branding campaigns.
Great. So a lot of groundwork in action then.
Our technical team are very busy at the minute, yes.
All right, so I think, Scott, my final question would be to you, like, what are examples of businesses that are looking well prepared?
Yeah, so I mean, we've been working on this project for a few years, as I said, and it's been really exciting to see kind of the innovation coming out of this space and people thinking about new ways and new ideas around these new private signals. So, and also a lot of the feedback that we've gotten from those early testers has helped to inform the design and inform some of the decisions that we've made, like how we mentioned, so that we can make sure that these are suitable and fit for purpose for our industry. And so, yeah, you could go today to privacysandbox.com and you can see a list of companies that are already testing or experimenting and implementing the APIs and kind of get an understanding of who's out there and what they're working with. I would say for most people in this room, probably as maybe an advertiser or an agency, you won't be the people that are directly integrating with the technologies. You won't necessarily have to write code or do anything specifically with them. You'll be sort of still interacting with your same vendors, same partners and ad tech companies that you do today. They'll just be doing this using new signals or new tools, new pipes that are more private and don't include sort of a unique identifier from a third-party cookie. So hopefully that transition will be smooth, but we got feedback certainly from the ecosystem that we needed this period, this extended period where the legacy systems based on third-party cookies were available, and the new systems were going to be available as well, so that we could make sure that we're testing, we're optimizing, we're understanding how those changes will take place before we remove third-party cookies next year, and we don't, and have unintended consequences or move people into other ways of tracking that are maybe less private and more invasive in terms of users.
Great. All right. So we think this is a good change for the users. And not just that, it provides a whole new ecosystem with great possibilities to target on performance campaign and branding campaigns. So we're all looking very optimistic and also very excited to see what lies ahead. Now, unfortunately, we've run out of time, and we can't take any audience question, as it was quite a beefy topic. But do grab us. Our stand's right here, and Scott, Billy, and Luke would be at the event all day. So thank you for tuning in, and let's give it up for our wonderful panelists.